So folks, if you're just joining us and turning on your video, welcome back. We're just in the chat room here, or we're having a side chat with our neighbor, just reflecting on what might have stood out as you read through all the projects in the gallery tour and heard about the projects before lunch. So any kind of reflections on what you noticed or what stood out? Lots of people, there were some really nice comments. Yeah, community led, nice variety, it's inspiring. Yeah, some of the smallest and simplest interventions can make a big difference. Yeah, great, Celeste. Awesome. So folks, while you're thinking about that and typing your thoughts in the chat room, I'm going to start getting us into our afternoon. We've got a busy, tight, energetic afternoon planned. So just want to touch down on where we are in the agenda and where we're heading. It's 1 o'clock now. We're going to move into our first segment of the afternoon. And at this point, I'm going to start to work you through some conversations, some activities that will get you to explore more deeply what already exists in your community, what strengths exist, and then we'll gradually move into thinking about what are some actions that we can commit to at a personal and a collective level. Okay, so that's where we're heading. Looking at the chat, lots of people are commenting on your experience in the gallery tour. I noted a couple of seconds ago, I was in as I was eating my lunch and loved seeing all the comments and the responses and reflections on some of the projects. Everything that you typed by way of comments or responses, I'll be sharing all of that back to the planning committee. So if there's a question in there, and I know some people had questions, the planning committee will certainly take a look at those questions and think about how to get back to you. So everything you typed is going to be kept. The other thing I would like to share about the gallery tour, we're going to keep it live for at least, I'm going to say the next month. Okay, so for the next month, that link that I shared with you or that Joanna shared, if you've got colleagues that you want to share that around with so that they can also look at the projects, look at the videos, share some comments, we'd love to use this as a space for people to learn and to consider more and more about these projects. So feel free to share the link. It'll be live for at least the next month. Love it. Thank you. Christine is saying, like the format, yes, easy to navigate. Well, I love to hear that because we're going to be using Padlet 2 more times this afternoon now that you're oriented to it. So let's get into our afternoon. And at this point, I'm going to get you to reflect on another question. And before Joanna puts it up in the chat room, this question is about, similar to what we talked about this morning, we want you to think about specifically in your community, who or what groups are you noticing are most impacted by social isolation? Certainly Christina and Mary Pat talked about, it's across the lifespan, so we appreciate that. But we want you to think about in your community specifically, what do you notice? So Joanna, if you want to poke up that question, and then I'll tell people what's going to happen. So if you want, you can refer to page 10 in your handbook, and the questions are there. You're going to have about 3 minutes. It might not take you that long. I want you to think about who or what groups are most impacted by social isolation or loneliness. Who is most at risk of becoming isolated in your community? So let's do video off. I think 2 minutes is all you need. Let's just think 2 minutes, videos off. Who is most at impact? And please do not type your response in the chat room, or please do not tell your neighbor if you're in a pod. Keep it quiet for now. 2 minute reflection. So the next step is I'd like you to do one of 2 things. If you're in a small pod, in a small group, I'd like you to just share what you just thought in your small group. So just look around the table and do a bit of sharing for the next couple of minutes. If you're by yourself, I'd like you to go into the chat room and type your comment or your response, but please don't hit enter, because what we're going to do is we're going to build together what's called a chat waterfall or a chat storm. So it's critical, please do not hit enter. Okay, so type in your response and just hold for a moment. Okay, who's most at risk in your community? Type it out, don't hit enter. And in the groups, You can chat amongst yourselves. As soon as you've typed it, give me a yellow thumbs up reaction. If you go to the reaction button, then I'll know you're good to go. See a couple of yellow thumbs. We'll wait for a few more people. 52 devices, looking for 52 yellow thumbs. Yeah, at least close to that. Okay. Who's most at risk in your community? And if you can't find the reaction, just give me a physical thumb or a wave. Then I know we're good to go. Awesome. Now, just a small point, folks. I'm seeing a lot of people, like the majority of people this afternoon with their videos off. I really would encourage you, if you have the ability, to turn that video on, because we want this to be as engaging as it possibly can. And so in the same way that we would hope you show up fully engaged in a face-to-face, we would hope that you do the same virtually. So if you can turn that video on, if it's at all possible, we'd appreciate that. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to type in your response, folks. On the count of 3, 2, 1, I'm going to get you to press enter together, and then I want you to look at what's in the chat room, okay? So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, hit enter. Let's see what happens. Awesome, here it comes. So let's take a quiet moment, read through what people have typed, and then we'll go to the next step. So I'm seeing some really nice variety here, right? Some people have continued to add seniors, people in long-term care, rural communities, right? Those with lack of public transportation, that was a theme from this morning, youth, older adults, people living with a disability. So, you know, it's fairly varied, right? Awesome. And unique, I would expect, right? Depending on the community you live in or the communities that you're connected to. So the intent behind that was to get us thinking about who is at most risk. What I want you to do is, let's just park that, know that we're going to keep those comments, everything you put in the chat room, actually, we will keep. But what I want to do now is move to our next question. And we're going to do this in a similar way. I'd like you to think about the question, and Joanna, you can put this in the chat room as I'm reading it if you'd like. So the next question is, and this is on page 11 in your handbook. So if you're in a pod and you want to open up your handbook, it's on page 11. So this question is, what do you think contributes to social isolation or loneliness in your community? What obstacles or barriers exist? Now, I know that in the morning session with Christina and Mary Pat, they talked about barriers and obstacles, but this is about your community. What do you see in your community? So what would you say, the obstacles or barriers that exist in your community? Just make a note of that quietly. Don't put it in the chat. Just make a note for now. You can write it in your handbook or just on a piece of paper that you might have handy. And we're going to spend just a couple of minutes on this. Joanna, I'm going to invite you to open up your whiteboard now if you'd like. Awesome. Here comes Joanna's whiteboard. And could I get someone to just, maybe Celeste, if you're seeing this, could you just tell me if you're seeing Joanna's whiteboard okay?
Yes, I am.
I know I can see it, Joanna, so you're in good shape, I think.
Yes, I can see it as well.
What I'm going to do is invite just a couple of people to share what you wrote down by way of obstacles and barriers. And Joanna's going to write down a few. We've got many, many devices. We're not going to hear from everybody, but I just want to get a couple. And then anything that we haven't said, you can certainly go back into the chat. So if you're interested in sharing something, I'm going to try and see if we can do this systematically. Okay. I know some people are already into the chat. Let's avoid the chat for the moment because it gets a bit disconcerting when we've got chat and whiteboard happening at the same time. If you'd like to share something, maybe you could just raise your hand or give me a yellow thumb and then we'll give you permission to go off mute. Anybody want to share? And Joanna's going to type freely. Okay, Christine Weber, do you want to share? You've got your yellow thumb up. Go ahead.
I'll just leave it.
I'm in the city, but I know Accessibus is really limited.
Hearing nothing from Christine Weber, I'm going to move on.
She was talking.
Anyone
I
else
can,
like to
can you
share?
hear me?
I can.
If you'd like to just speed this up and just turn yourself off mute and start speaking, I'm okay for that.
I am speaking. I don't know why you're not hearing me. Some people are.
Okay. There you
I
go.
hear her.
Mary Desmond, is there somebody in your space who would like to share?
Yeah, he's not hearing.
Just write in the chat and say, like, buddy.
Gerard, I think that Christine
So I'm
was.
feeling like we're going to skip the whiteboard, Joanna, because people are making the attempt to do this in chat. So why don't we just close off the whiteboard, Joanna, and I'll go over to the chat and we'll manage it there instead. So you can just do a stop share. Awesome.
Chat with him.
So let's just look at the chat then to see what folks said.
No, thank. I'm gonna go get.
And yes, so that's it. I got the sense that people were speaking, but we weren't hearing them all, I don't think.
Gerard, Christine
So
Weber
very limited
started.
accessibus,
I don't know.
one obstacle, lack of communication and resources, lack of awareness, technology for sure from the Legion folks, right? Lack of resources again, income, mental health, right? Awesome. Transportation again comes up, accessible, open and free community spaces. Nice, okay. Geographical distance between communities, and there's others being added at the bottom. Okay, so everybody is wildly now typing in. This is awesome. Quite comfortable in the chat room, I'm sensing. Fear of unknown, income, coordinated information. Love that. Okay, if anybody has anything else that you want to add, go ahead and type it in the chat. Capacity to sustain programming. We've got geography, being new to the area. Right? Absolutely, right? Could be a barrier for me. I've just moved into your community. I know no one, right? Yeah, I love that. Okay. Good, okay. So feel free to add a few more. We're gonna capture those, okay? I wanna move us into our conversation group because the most value comes from you being able to chat with each other, okay? Rather than looking at me and activating in the chat room. So Celeste is saying to me, I don't think you were hearing people. Yeah, there were a few people, Celeste, I think I wasn't hearing. So that would mean that on their end, they are not turned on. They're
You hear me now?
not turned on.
Can you hear me now?
So I'm not hearing you right now either.
So I'm turned on.
So it's him that's the problem.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Good.
Oh,
I
that
can
was
hear, I can hear them, Gerard. This is Dorothy over at Kids First. I can hear them.
Okay.
This
I'm
is
hearing you.
Arishat.
Yeah, I'm hearing you guys now.
Okay, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, Celeste. Yeah.
Okay, so there was something wrong because we were all not muted and you weren't hearing us.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there because you can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about, but it's fixed now, it sounds. Maybe I'll just get one more person to test it. Could someone else, maybe Celeste, just say hi again. Let's just make sure.
Hi,
Hi
Gerard.
again.
Oh, there you go. Love it. Okay, there you go. No problem. So hence why you went into the chat room, right? Love that. Always good to have a contingency. Yeah, I'm not sure. There must be some kind of Zoom hiccup, but if that happens again, maybe you could, yeah, just type a note in the chat, or maybe Joanna, if you could text me, because I don't always pay attention to the chat in real time. So let's move into our first breakout conversation for the afternoon. So this is going to be one of those moments where I'm going to need you to just be patient for a couple of minutes because we've got such a large number of devices, and because we've got people working on their own and in pods, just want to make sure that we're really clear about who's in what group and what the process is going to look like. Okay. So first series of breakouts, we're going to use a Padlet tool like we did earlier today. So I'm going to show you the new Padlet tool, because in that tool will be the questions that you're going to think about. So I'm going to do a share and see if I can get this up on my screen. So this is your first breakout conversation coming your way. Awesome. And Joanna, can you just confirm that you're seeing this okay? Just say it out loud.
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. Okay. So folks, the intent behind this activity, okay, and I'm going to create some more context around it in a moment. I'm just going to walk through the tools. In this activity, we're going to get you to reflect on, there's two questions, but it's essentially asking the same thing. We want you to think about, given what's happening in your community right now today, what would you say are the strengths or assets that your community can draw upon, right, in order to best deal with social isolation or loneliness, right? So another way of thinking of it is what already exists or what's happening in your community that helps people deal with social isolation or loneliness. And I'm going to, again, talk a bit more about context around that in a moment. But just sort of on a practical level, when you go into your Padlet this time, you will be in a group. I'm going to assign you a group. So if you happen to be in group number 15, there's number 15, everybody has the same question, okay? What strengths or assets already exist that you can draw upon? You're going to type in your responses to that question in the comment, okay? As you type in the response, we want to make sure, and you'll see in my sample there, we want to make sure that you actually say the community that you're referencing. So my example is, one example that might be a strength is that in the community of Big Town, there's a community no audition choir. You don't need to audition for it. So you would write in the actual asset or the strength, put a slash, and tell us the community. Is it Antigonish? Is it Pictou, right? Now you might live in Glasgow and something is happening over in Pictou. You can include that as well, but just make sure you put the community. Also, you might say, well, this particular strength crosses over a number of communities. So feel free to put maybe, the region or the community health board area, or put the 2 or 3 communities that it's happening in. The key is we just want to get a sense of which community you mean, okay? So you will, in your small group, type in as many strengths and assets, right, as you can think of in the time that you're being allocated. 1 strength or asset per comment, and make sure you add the community name. So what I encourage you to do is don't just type them all into 1 comment and press enter. We want 1 comment, 1 strength asset, okay, just 1 per. That's kind of the key instruction. And that's all reiterated up here at the very top of the description on your Padlet. It says, consider the question, type 1 response in each add comment box, add as many responses as you can, and remember to add the community name to each response, as in the sample that I've given you, right? You'll see. So this is where you'll land. Similar to before, Joanna's going to give you a Padlet link. You're going to go in. Now you're going to notice people are going to be typing all around you, right? Just ignore that. Just focus on your own post, okay, your own group number. So that's where you're going to do the work, okay? Let's talk for a minute about the setup for that, and then I'll get you into your groups, okay? So the setup is, without getting into a whole lecturette around community asset building. Oops, here we go. Just wanted to highlight, because people often say, when we think about community strengths and assets, what do we mean, okay? And it really is anything that exists that is going to help with the issue at hand. That's really kind of lay terms. So when we think about social isolation and loneliness, we may be thinking about a space that exists. So an asset might be, we have a community center. We have a church hall. You can list that, the church hall in Antigonish, right? Or the community center in Pictou, right? So think about space that exists that you could, draw from. Think about businesses. Maybe there's a business in your community that's an asset or has the strength to provide, right? Associations, institutions, community groups, organizations, community service groups. We want to think about the people in your community as well, right? Maybe, there's the priest at the church, maybe the high school teacher, maybe your neighbor down the road, you know, John Brown, right, has a certain skill or contribution. So when we think about the assets and the strengths in your community that can help with the issue of social isolation and loneliness, we want you to keep broad. Okay, now if you want, you can take a picture of this if you've got your camera handy. Okay, we're not married to this, of course, but this is just to give you a sense of the scope when you think about assets in your community. Okay, so with that said, remember back in your Padlet wall, when you add a comment, it's not just about services and programs and projects that exists, right? It's about all those other strengths and assets that may help to contribute to solving the issue or contributing to a solution. Okay, so that said, that's the lens through which we want you to look through. The questions on the Padlet, okay, it's all about strengths and weaknesses, strengths and assets. Let's get you into your breakout groups. So the first thing I want to do, and this has to be fairly systematic, Joanna is going to post the numbers of the breakout groups for our pods. So we'll do the pods first, Joanna, and then I'm going to tell everybody else where they're going, all the solo participants. So if you are hosting a pod, you need to come close to your monitor and look at what Joanna's going to type, because this is going to tell you the number that we're assigning your pod, okay? Awesome. And I'm just going to review this quickly. So in the Legion, and you might want to take a picture of this or write it down, okay? At the Legion, you will be number 18. So when you go into the Padlet, Legion people, you need to go and find number 18, and that's where you put your comments. Mary Desmond, your group is going to be number 20. Sherbrooke is 12. Town of Mulgrave is 19. Kingston Center is 17. Arishat is 15. Women's Place is 13. And Sydney is 14. And I skipped a few. Okay, here we go. Back up to the Antigonish Library. Because you've got such a big group in Antigonish Library, we're giving you 3 groups. So I'm suggesting you create table groups. You've got 3 different posts to track responses for that groups. 38, 39, 40. Kid First is 11. We've dealt with the others. Okay, so these are your pod groups. If you're not in a pod, this does not apply to you. Okay. Yes, the lack of access to technology is very important. Also, internet should be deemed as an essential service. So I'm not sure, Christine, if that's a question or if that's a comment you're sharing with someone else. Maybe you're having a side conversation there. Okay, so all of the pods have been dealt with. So now I need to speak to all the individual solo attendees, okay? So similarly, but yet a little bit different, okay? So here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna just check and make sure. I'm gonna move a few people around, okay. If you see me staring at the screen, as I'm staring at a box as I get these rooms sorted. Some people have come and gone, so I need to just shuffle a couple people around. So I need to move this person to group 4. Okay, how does that look? So when you get into your groups, folks, if you're on your own here on Zoom, you'll be in a group of 3 to 4 people, okay? And here it comes. I can't read every name. We'll be here all afternoon, but I'm going to tell you the group numbers, and I'm going to say 1 or 2 names so that that person, the names I'm saying out loud, if you could write down your room number, actually your group number, so when you get into your group, somebody knows what your group number is. Can you do that for me? Everybody say yes. Okay. So breakout room number 1. I've got people like Celine. I'm just going to read it out loud. Celine, Karen, Leanne, Taylor, and Marie. You're group 1. We have no group 2. Skip 2. Group 3 is Christine, Madonna, and Shauna. Group 4, I've got Celeste, Haley, and Monica Quigley. That's 4. Group 3 is Ashley Rhino, Debbie, and Trisha Shell. Breakout 6 is Cassandra, Lori Chapman, and Millie. Breakout number 7, there's 4 people. I think the name is Braday, B-R-A-D-A-I-G-H. I'm crucifying it, McIver, Braday, McIver, Carl, Higgins, Darlene, and Trish. That's group 7. Number 8 is Daisy, Eric, and Michelle Power. Okay. Now, can somebody confirm with me in the chat if Michelle Power is still in that room? Because if not, I might need to move somebody in with Daisy and Eric. I think that was a separate room. Number 9 is Adrian, Carl, Jacqueline Campbell, and Sheila. And number 10 is Helen, Laura Dowling, and Marlene LeBlanc. And then we have all of our solo. Okay, awesome. And I see Joanna is asking for the slide again. I can pop that up for sure. So the only hiccup I have here potentially, and I'm looking for somebody in the chat to confirm, maybe somebody in Antigonish, if Sarah, if you were there, is Michelle Power still in that room? Or Joanna, can you check that out? If not, we can add a person. Okay. So hopefully at this point, you've all got your numbers written down of your groups. That's going to be important because if you get bumped out and you come back in, I'm going to need to know where to put you. So when you get into your groups, folks, just make sure you say out loud, we are group number 10 or we are group number 6, just to be really clear, okay? So then you'll all know if you get bumped out. And then the other thing I'll suggest is when you go into the Padlet, before you start to answer, in the first comment, this is really important, in the first comment, if you could type the names of the people in your group so we have it documented, okay? Appreciating that you might get bumped out and bumped back in, but to start the activity, I really need you to type in the names of the people in your small group. Awesome, okay. It looks like Michelle Power is still here, brilliant, super. Katie, you missed yours. I didn't read everybody's name, so, but respectfully, because you asked, I'll see if I can find you. Okay, there may be a couple people. Let's just see, I can't find Katie here. So there may be a few people who aren't assigned a room because I did this over lunch. So I'll assign you as I open up the rooms. So what will happen for someone like Katie, if you haven't been assigned, I'll put you in a room. When you get in the room, just ask your group members what number you are, okay? So this is all the setup, folks. I know it's taking a few minutes, but this will set us up for the rest of the afternoon. So here comes the slide. Joanna, you said people were asking for it again. I'm assuming it's this one. Is that the one you need, Joanna?
Yes, I believe so. Thanks, Gerard.
Okay. So I'll give people a chance to maybe take a photo of that. Okay. Turn that off. Okay. So just to reiterate where we're heading, I'm going to hit the button. You're going to move into your virtual groups. Hopefully 1 or 2 people in your group have tracked your number. When you get into the Padlet, go to your numbered post. That's where you insert your responses. Just get one person to type the responses on your behalf. If you get bumped out, I'm going to need to know your number when you come back in. Okay. You're going to have, it's 1:30. This is going to take a good, let's see, how are we doing for time? We're good for time. Why don't we say a good 20 minutes? Actually, let's do 25. I'm going to give you 25 minutes by the time you get in and get settled. So I want you back here if we could. You'll get a notice. You're going to be finished at 1:55. Okay. Joanna, if you could upload the Padlet for this activity, we're ready for that now. And before I do anything, Celeste, I just see your blue hand. Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I just want to confirm that not all names were mentioned. So other people that have not, names were not mentioned, have been assigned to a group. I see a bunch of people on the screen whose names were not mentioned.
Yeah, so as I said, Celeste, I didn't read everybody's name. And there would be people like who might have left for lunch and came back in who wouldn't be assigned a room because they weren't here. So what will happen now is when I set up the breakout rooms and I hit the button, there's going to be people left behind, right? That happens all the time. And then I will put them into a room. Right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so they don't need to notify you.
No, it'll just happen. They'll just have nowhere to go. They'll end up staying here. And then I'll put them in a room. So the things you need to remember is when you're starting your conversation, about a minute or 2 later, you might have somebody suddenly appear because they've been assigned, right? So just welcome them and tell them your group number and jump right in. Yeah, it's a good question to clarify. So here's the Padlet. We'll get everybody to open the Padlet. Once you open it, again, just give us a thumbs up to let us know that you're finding it okay. And then we'll get you going in your groups. So looking for some yellow thumbs here. This, just like we did before lunch with the gallery tour, it should work swimmingly well. Ah, good. Seeing some yellow thumbs. Okay. So I'm going to check our breakouts. And so if you're not assigned, we'll make that work for you. So let's see, nothing has changed in the last couple of minutes. Most groups have 3 to 4 people, just so you know what to expect. Okay, so 1:35. We're going to give you 25 minutes. So let's just round it off to 2 o'clock with a 5-minute notice. Here comes your rooms, guys. Opening them up now. Please accept the invite. For you to reflect on your community strengths and assets. And I was just in the Padlet tool and I see there's some great lists generated, some really long lists in some cases, which is fantastic. So you can feel free to go back in there and see what your neighbors typed. But what I want to do is I want to give us a chance to get a little sharing happening. Okay, we don't have the time to go to every group and get you to report back. That's not the intent. I'm going to look for 4 groups who'd be willing to hit some highlights, maybe to share some of the things that you documented by way of strengths and assets. Now, before you volunteer or not, the idea is those 4 groups with me are going to stay on the screen. We're going to try and do what we call a fishbowl. And some of you might have seen a fishbowl kind of done in person in a facilitated session. We're going to try and do something, you know, like a quasi fishbowl in a virtual setting. So I'm looking for 4 volunteers who would be willing to jump in a fishbowl and take maybe 30 seconds to a minute and just share some of what you typed in the comments. Anybody willing to do that? I'm looking for some yellow thumbs for volunteers. Anybody willing to share? Totally unplanned and unrehearsed. Even some of our discussion hosts, you know, in some of the pods, if you're willing to step forward and share as well on behalf of your group. So I've got Antigonish Library. Great, that's 1. I'll write that down. So we have the library. Thank you. Who else do we have? We need 3 more people, 3 more pods or 3 more individuals. Anyone from our pods willing to do some sharing? There we go. I see a yellow thumb. Jacqueline Campbell, we'll have you share. Thank you for that. Jacqueline, we got 2. Anyone else? We need at least 1 more to balance it out a little bit. Anybody willing to share? Okay. So I see Kids First is volunteering. Okay, so Kids First. So why don't we leave it with that? So we've got the library in Antigonish, we got Jacqueline Campbell in Halifax, and Kids First. So if you are not one of those 3 images, which is a lot of you, I'm going to get you to turn your video off, please. So the only videos I'd like to see on would be mine, Kids First, the library, and Jacqueline's. Okay? And now you're seeing a lot of names on your screen, which is exactly what we want. So everyone else, Karen, Joanna, you can all turn yours off. Mary Desmond, if we can get you to turn your video off. Celeste, if we can get you to turn your video off. Okay, so then folks, the way this fishbowl is going to work is if you go into your control panel at the very bottom left, there's the stop video little image. Next to stop video, there's a button, a little arrow that points up, and then you'll see video settings. I'm going to get you to go into your video settings, and there's a little box there. It says hide non-video participants. You're going to check that box, and then what will happen is when you come out of that, you're just going to see these 3 or 4 images on your screen, which is what we want. Okay? So I know I've got it done on my screen, but I can't control what you do on your screen. So if you just want to see the 3 or 4 of us, that's where you go. And then after we're done, you'll have to turn that off. So looking at me right now, I see Jacqueline Campbell, I see Antigonish Library, and I see Kids First. And I'm going to invite those 3 individuals just to turn your mics on. so the four of us can speak somewhat freely. And I'm going to systematically go around just the little fishbowl that we've created and just invite each of you to take, 30 seconds to 45 seconds and just share some examples of some of the assets and strengths that you came up with and any observations around how that activity went in your small group. Is there any one of the three of you who are biting at the bit to go first? Are you willing to start? There you go. So Anna Ganesh, you're dead on. Let's do it. So let's listen to Anna Ganesh, please. You've got about 45 seconds. Go. Oh, there's Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there. One of the things that came out of our group that we thought might be an interesting addition is that in Antigonish, we feel like, and Buckingec and surrounding county, we feel like there's a lot of very visible leaders in the community that come from this tradition of, grassroots organizing and development, that they're also willing to act as mentors and kind of help that tradition continue. So that's sort of three answers in one, but
Awesome.
visible leaders, tradition of organizing and community development,
Yeah.
and willingness to mentor new people.
Very nice. Love that. Any sense? I'm really, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Just Crystal reminded me that as well as its informal ways of mentoring, as well as these more formalized structures for doing that too.
Nice. And just for the viewers who are watching, you've got like a really big group of people there. Do you actually have 12 people in the room there, Sarah, would you say?
I think there's 9.
9 of you.
Yeah, we ended up with 10. I should adjust my numbers.
Okay, that's okay. No, I was just curious just to keep the profile of the group sorted. Thank you, Sarah, and your friends there in Antigonish at the library. Just randomly, maybe we'll go from a pod to an individual, and maybe we'll invite our colleague Jacqueline from Halifax to share for a couple of seconds.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. We had a lot of fun with that exercise and I think the four of us felt really engaged. So it was Sheila, who's new to the province and a gerontologist, Carol Rogers, and Adrienne. I didn't catch where Adrienne was from. We talked about community readiness and individual leadership as well, but businesses, we thought about some of those informal businesses in our communities that or some of those businesses in our communities that create informal spaces. So be it a coffee shop where maybe a local artists show their work, or local musicians play. They provide an opportunity for people to come and have unplanned conversations and interactions, and businesses, local community businesses kind of can lay the groundwork for that. We also talked about some things in relation to the physical space, like when I use the example where I'm, like Gerard, I'm from St. John's, and I watched over the summer Water Street be turned into a walkable street that brought all sorts of people out, all ages interacting, stopping, poking in stores, sitting on benches, just people watching or going to restaurants. And there's a lot of that on boardwalks across Nova Scotia and places that have been intentionally looked at from a walkability perspective, that have good lighting, have a bathroom. We really saw that during COVID, that you need somewhere to be able to stop and pee. That have somewhere to sit, that bring people together in unplanned ways. There were other things, but I'll just leave it with that right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacqueline. Nice shout out to St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Appreciate that. Let's move to Kids First. I have to say, looking at Kids First, I wish I was there. You look so comfortable in your comfortable, cozy couches. Who'd like to share on behalf of Kids First? A couple of highlights in terms of what you noted by way of strengths and assets. So here comes the camera.
I'm going to turn this around to me, Gerard, because we're just having a ball over here at Kids First, by the way. We're comfy, we're cozy, we're socially distanced, we're well fed, we're enjoying the day. And that kind of sums up what we think about when we think about the assets of our community. We have lots and tons of infrastructure, indoor and outdoor, great program space just like this. We have great programming. We have lots of service clubs. And you can tell from our group 11 Padlet list that we went on and on about how much programs and services we have. And our businesses are always willing to stop and chip in when needed. And we always have people that are on the ground working for community at the community level to tackle big problems like poverty,
Awesome.
housing, supporting new moms, supporting children that need help, supporting, and we have wonderful people, infrastructure, and programs. So if we can get all these things lined up, we're ready to go over here at Kids First.
Awesome. I love the energy. That's fantastic. Thanks, guys, for that. And before I go back to the large group, only because I've got you now, I've got a little bit of a fishbowl happening. I'm curious about when you were engaged in that discussion on the Padlet. Was there anything that you talked about by way of, I'll back it up. Were there individual names of people that came up? Because sometimes when we talk about strengths and assets, people actually say, oh my God, Jane Doe, my neighbor, or school teacher Joanne. Can you give me any examples, if you're comfortable sharing any names that came up? Let's celebrate. Maybe we'll go back to Antigonish. Did you notice that you were saying people's names at all?
We absolutely were naming names,
Yeah.
and even nicknames.
Yeah.
We mentioned, Carla Stevens mentioned Juliana Julian at the health center in Buckingham, and how wonderful a mentor she's been in, for the women in her community. We mentioned business owners out at the St. McDonald's convenience store,
Yep.
for
Okay.
setting up little kind of community spots. They didn't share the nickname, actually. We're going to get that information later. But yeah, we did talk about specific people. Yeah.
Awesome. I was just curious about that because I know years ago when I was doing a lot of community development work, we would actually have to pause and force people to think about like the people too. We often forget about the people. So I'm happy to hear that was your experience for sure.
I want to just add something on that because it wasn't necessarily people's names, but we did talk about the people who are in the virtual room with us today and mentioned, the strengths, the assets that senior safety programs bring, that Community Links Association, that the public health and the libraries, both in their people, in their programs, and in their physical space. So we talked about it on that association institution level, but
Okay.
it's all about the people who are in those institutions and associations.
Great. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thank you all for willing to get in my fishbowl with me. I'm going to invite everybody else to start to turn on your videos. We'll come back in a large group. If you went in and you hid the non-video folks, you might want to go back and turn that back on like I'm going to do right now. So under your video, you'll turn back on hide non-video participants, then you'll see everybody. Awesome. And we'll keep everybody muted for now. So in our couple of minutes before break, here's a question I always like to ask. I mean, when I look at your Padlet wall, in a lot of these communities, like there's a lot of good stuff, right? Great strengths and assets. We've heard a couple of really good examples. What do you think that suggests to folks who live in those communities in terms of the opportunity or what we need to think about when it comes to dealing with isolation and loneliness? Given the long lists, what does that say in terms of what opportunities exist? Anybody willing to kind of reflect on that and share a reflection? It's kind of a big deal question, right? I mean, clearly there's lots of good stuff happening. Like, look at the long lists. But what does that say? Just because there's a long list, what does it tell us?
Can I?
Go ahead, Maggie.
Okay, so to me, it means it needs better communicating of these lists.
Okay.
That people, all the resources are out there, people just don't know how to find them or don't know who to ask to.
Yeah.
So it's communication and reaching people, reaching
Okay.
out to people.
Okay.
It would be
Love that.
to me, because like you say, the lists are very long.
Yep, good. Thanks for that. Thanks, Maggie. And likely when you go back into Padlet wall later and start reading other groups' lists, you'll probably have the experience of saying, oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know that exists. Or, oh, that's a really good idea. I should probably learn about that, or maybe we could do something similar in our community. Often what happens, and you know this because you live it, we know stuff happens and things exist, and we make assumptions then that, well, we must be in pretty good shape. There's a lot of good assets and strengths in our communities. The challenge sometimes becomes, as Maggie's alluded to, connecting those dots, right? And then thinking about what are the opportunities in and around those strengths and assets that need to still be explored. So thank you for that. There's a method to our madness here, you can see, right? Because what we wanted to do in that last activity is get you to think about, you know, the kind of the lay of the land, as we say. You know, what does it look like today? What exists? What do we have at our fingertips? Because where we want to move to after break is more of a deeper discussion around what does all that suggest in terms of action that we need to commit to, either as a person or as a collective. So with that note, I'm going to suggest we take our break. It's 2:15, which means we're dead on time. And we have a half-hour plan for break. And I'm wondering if maybe, because I understand people are probably been sitting a lot, let's tighten that break up a little bit. Okay, it's 2:15. Are people comfortable? How about this? Why don't we say 2:20, 2:35? Give you a good 20 minutes break. Can people live with that? Does anybody who can't live with that, this is your time to speak. Give you a good 20-minute break. Awesome. So say 2:35, ready to go, back in your chairs, as we say. Go grab a cup of tea, run to the washroom, you know, let the dog out. We'll see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. As we gather for our last bit of work for the afternoon and the day. Give everybody a chance to get their videos back on, get settled. Hopefully you've had a chance to get a bit of a break. Awesome. Okay, so again, as we said all day, we really encourage you, if you could, to keep that video on while we're in large group and when you're in small group discussions. It just, you know, really supports the engagement that we're trying to create during the day. So if you can make that happen for us, we'll give you a chance to find that video button. Awesome. Folks, we're going to move into our last bit of work. It's 2:36. We're great for time. So we want to move into our last couple of activities before we start our wind down and wrap up. And we're now moving into a conversation around actions and what we can commit to on an individual level. More importantly, not that we're judging one over the other, but even more broadly, we also want you to think about what we can do as a collective. So we want to start more at a personal level first. So in order to do this one, I'm going to invite you to turn to page 14 in the handbook that you have. So if you're in a pod or if you've got it in front of you or on your screen, you can turn to page 14. But I'd like you to do nothing with that at this point. Just keep it open. And then my invitation to you is I'm going to get you to do an activity that I call, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, so this activity is called 1 Up, 2 Down. So the way this works is when I stop speaking, I'm going to ask you to stand up because we've been seated the whole day. So if you can stand up in a moment, you're going to stand for 1 minute, then you're going to sit for 2. Okay. In the 1 minute that you're standing, I literally want you to stand, you know, gaze out the window, sway if you need to stretch a little bit. You know, if you're in a pod, I'm going to invite you to stand up as well. In this minute, I want you to think about the question that's in that handbook. And Joanna, you can post the question if you like now so folks can see it. It says, what are you excited about based on the opportunities that you're hearing today? What's sparked ideas for you, right? And to think about that, what's really stood out to you? Oh, what a great idea. Or we should do that in our community. So what have you been thinking about that's really sparked your ideas? And I want you to think about that for a minute. And then when the minute is done, you're going to sit down for 2 minutes and document your answer in your handbook. Okay? And if you want to share it in the chat, that's great as well. But we'd like you to track it in your handbook or somewhere where you're going to keep. Now I just need to test something. Can somebody tell me if you hear my bell? Good. Okay. So what will happen is I'm going to get everybody to stand to the extent that you're comfortable, and make sure if you got cords, you don't trip up in cords. And if you want to turn your video off for this, we don't need to see you. You can turn your video off if you like. I'm going to ring the bell and then give you a minute to think and reflect. And then when you hear the bell again, then you're going to sit down and do your documentation. So basically, in that minute with your video off, you can do whatever you want, okay? But it's meant to be a movement. Stretch if you need to, sway if you need to, but I want you to think about the question. So I'm going to turn my video off as well, because God knows what I might do in the next 60 seconds. Okay, so with that said, when you hear the bell, think about the question, move around a little bit, wait for the second bell, sit down and do some writing. Here it comes. Okay. I think that's probably a good minute. So I wasn't timing it too specifically. Hopefully you moved around a little bit. If not, you were at least standing, which is a nice break. So quietly for 2 minutes, think about that question, make a couple of notes. What are you excited about? What sparked your interest? We'll stay quiet for 2. I'll invite you back. If you turn off your video, you can turn it back on as we launch into our next bit of work. The idea behind that step 1 was to get you to think about, to this point in our day, what's really stood out? What's excited you? What sparked maybe some new ideas? I want you to hold on to those ideas as you move into your final breakout conversation of the day. I'm going to set you up. Because you've done one already before break, you kind of know what's coming at you. It's going to sort of feel the same way because we'll use another Padlet wall. I'm going to show you the wall you're going to use this time because the question is on it. And here it comes. And I see, who do I see here? And Joanna, if you can just maybe say if you can see this for me, please.
I can see it, Gerard.
Thank you, Joanna. Okay. So folks, we're into breakout number 2. So the idea here is, again, in the same group numbers that you had earlier, so hopefully you wrote down those group numbers, same group of people, you're going to think about these questions. Okay, now there's 2 questions, but it's pretty much the same theme. We want you to think about what can we do together, keyword, to keep people connected? What specific actions can community organizations commit to in working on social isolation? Now, a couple of things to say about the questions. I remember years ago, I was involved in a similar piece of work and we were working through a similar activity, and a lot of the suggestions that came up sounded like people saying, well, they need to change that, or that group over there, they really need to do A, B, and C. It wasn't about what the people should do, which really wasn't the intent. We really want you to think about what you as an organization, as a community group, right, as folks who are part of community groups and organizations and businesses, what can you do as a collective in your community, right? It's not about necessarily saying they should do X, but it's we should do Y, right? So what I want you to think about is community organizations, groups, service clubs, companies, organizations, informal, right? Me and my neighbors, right? It doesn't need to be a formal group per se, but just as a collective, okay? Now, number 2, I've got a couple of examples because we want specific actions here if we can. And so I put in 3 samples. So this is what we're looking for. 1 action per comment box. And I'd like you to start an action with a verb. They need to be action oriented if we can. So things like create a something. And the Green Tree Center is going to be the lead on that. I want you to tell me who's going to lead it, right? Who are the players in your group that you think are going to be able to really lead that particular action? So create a something. The Green Tree Center is stepping up. They're thinking they've got something to contribute, some value to add. There might be another one, start a something. Now, Joe and Bertha, they're neighbors. They think they can make that happen together, right? Or maybe Joe and Bertha are volunteers at the library, right? Individuals coming together, okay? Third one example could be to host a something. So maybe business X and church group Y, they're gonna come together collaboratively and look at hosting a something. So you see the rhythm, right? We want you to look at an action-oriented statement, okay, where there's something going to be built or created or actioned. And I want you to make sure you include, if you can, who the lead is. And that's all articulated at the very top of the Padlet. It says it up here. Add as many responses as you can. Please remember to add the lead or the lead's names at the end of each action, okay? So that hopefully will start to prevent us from just putting in an action that you think someone else should do necessarily, right? Not that they're not necessarily bad ideas, but we really want to see movement, okay? So if we can really focus at least at a minimum on actions that you yourself as a group feel you can take on, okay? Now, you might need help, you might need funding, right? So don't let that turn you off, like still type it in because we're going to talk about funding options and opportunities a little bit later. Similar rhythm, we'll get you into your groups, get your Padlet going, type in your responses. We're at 2:46. This one, again, I'm going to give you a good maybe 25 minutes once we get going. So we'll see where we are once the groups get going. So I'll stop sharing. We'll hold off sharing the Padlet quite yet. We'll do that in a second, Joanna. Okay. So breakout groups are the same. And if you want, you can put back in the pod group numbers. And so at this moment, I'm just speaking to the discussion hosts, if you could perk your ears up for a moment. The pods themselves are getting an invitation to join a group. Now you might think that's counterintuitive because it's just you're only a group, but on Zoom, I need each pod to accept the invite so you're off in a separate room and not in the main room with me and Joanna. When you go into that room by yourself, I can then come visit you as a pod. Right? I can't do that if you stay in the main room. So again, if you're in one of these pods, I need you to please accept the invitation and go off in cyberspace in your own place. Okay, it's all good. It's where you need to be. Everybody else, if you could please accept the invitation. One of the things I've discovered, and it's happened here, when the invite comes up on your screen, you don't minimize Zoom. As soon as you start to minimize, you may close out of Zoom, you might get bumped out. Okay, so really watch for the invite and accept it like right away if you can. The issue becomes if you open up Padlet, your Padlet wall is going to be open, right? So let's get Padlet open and then minimize Padlet, get it out of the way, and then I'm going to get you to do the invite. So let's do it systematically this time. Joanna, if you could please put the Padlet link in the chat room for breakout number 2. So that's coming at you, folks. There you go. So you'll see that if we can get everybody to open it, but then minimize it. Don't exit out, just minimize it on your screen. So you still, now you see me again, right? I want you to be able to see me when I set up the groups, okay? So everybody get your Padlet open and then just hit the little line to minimize it temporarily. And if you've successfully done that, give me a yellow thumb or some visible sign. Okay, so you're opening it, but just minimize it temporarily. Thank you guys, perfect. Because I need you to see me and see Zoom before the breakout invitation comes up. That was a bit of a hiccup, I think, earlier for a couple of people. Awesome, okay, so your Padlet wall now is minimized. You're not looking at it, hopefully. Here comes your breakout groups. Just let me test and make sure I've got adequate numbers. So similar to before, there's between 3 and 4 people. Okay, I do have one person by themselves. Debbie Anderson, I'm going to move you right now into a new room. And so you're going to be with a few new folks. Please welcome Debbie to your group when she gets there. Okay, there you go. Let's see if I have any other people by themselves. Oh, nope, we're good. Okay, brilliant. So when I click the button, you should see the invite go into your groups. It's 2:50. So let's do by 3:15. We'll see. Now, if I feel like you need more time, because I'm going to kind of walk around and pop into your rooms, watch out on your screen because I might send you a message and it comes up kind of tiny, but you might see a notification saying, you know, I've given you more time. So watch for any little image on your screen with a message. Here comes 2:50 is your start time. Your rooms are opening now.
Yeah. Oh, God, I have no idea. I do not see any. They're all leaving. Just see you act. I didn't get a. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Hi, if you can hear me. I think I didn't get an invitation that I seen.
So Sherbrooke, hi Sherbrooke.
Yeah,
So
I'm having problems.
Yeah.
I didn't get an invitation. I
It's
don't think
okay.
so.
If you don't, we're going to just get you to go do the work and not get too stuck on it. But
No.
I'll just see. I can check here and see if you got one, if there was one sent to you.
Was it in the chat box?
Nope, it's not in the chat box. It comes up
Oh.
as its own. So there you go. So because you had a hiccup in the last breakout, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I did.
So I'm going to put you in a room. Yeah, let me just find an empty room for you here. Okay, I'm going to move you to, there you go. So you should see an invite coming up. It just means you're going to be sitting on the screen by yourself, nothing else. And then you can just go off and do your thing.
Okay.
Here it comes. Okay, so Daisy J and Laura Chapman. How are we doing? Did you not get your invite? Laura Chapman. Are you able to unmute and let us know how you're doing? What about Daisy J? Daisy, are you there? Can you unmute and let us know how you're making out? Maybe you're on a phone or maybe you stepped away. Okay, we'll assume that, Joanna, that maybe they've just stepped away. I'm just gonna step over to the Padlet wall and make sure people are in there and it's working. Looks like breakout 1-4 is back. Others coming behind you here. Got about 24 seconds before everybody gets pushed back into the main room. We're down to 15 seconds. I'll ask everybody to turn your mute on. We'll keep yourselves on mute. And here they come. Awesome. Okay, as we all land back in the room. Okay. Looks like we're back at 3:16 in the afternoon. We're grand for time, which is good. So I was skulking around on the Padlet, and lots of great stuff being generated, right? Some really good actions, some beginnings of some really interesting collaborations starting to percolate which is really exciting to see. So the intent behind that really is to get you to start to think about collective actions. I mean, the next step will be whether we actually, jump on those actions and make them happen, of course. What I want to do is similar to last time. I'd really like to hear a few examples. We've got a lot of groups. We can't go to every group, but I'm going to invite maybe 3 to 4 groups to join me again in a fishbowl. You've already seen it, so you know what it looks like. Any 3 or 4 groups willing to come and do some sharing. I'm interested in maybe having you share even just one really interesting idea or project or action that you think others might be kind of keen to hear about. Who would like to join me in a fishbowl? Let's see, who do we have? Oh, I just saw a yellow thumb as I whipped by. So Arichet and Marie. So Arichet and Marie, I have. As I put my head down, I'm probably missing others. That's 2. Let's see, do we have 2 more? 2 more groups. Got anything really exciting that you want to share by way of an action or project? Oh, I just saw, oh, Town of Mulgrave and Antigonish Library. Mulgrave and the library. And I feel like I saw another one. Everybody put their finger up. And Sydney, awesome. Okay, some of our pods are stepping up. Okay, so we'll pause there. So I've got Arichet, Maria Coyne, Mulgrave, the library in Antigonish, and Sydney. So that's 5. So if you're not one of those devices, if you could put yourself, turn your video off. And then again, my recommendation to create the fishbowl is to go under stop video, hit your video settings, and then under meetings there, you'll see hide non-video participants, and that will hide everybody else temporarily on your screen. You can switch it back when we're done, of course. So once we do that, we should be left with all of those folks. There's 1 or 2 other videos. That's all good. Laura Dowling, you can turn your video off too, Laura, as well, unless you're feeling compelled to do any sharing. There you go. And Sheila, you can keep your video off as well. Awesome. Okay, so at 3:19, similar to before. So folks, the one thing I'll say is this isn't your opportunity to do a 10-minute presentation on your project idea. This isn't your pitch. This is your 45 seconds. This is the idea we talked about or the action, and something that you think might be of interest for others to hear. Is there anybody really biting the bit to go first? Who'd like to start? Give me a hand wave. Okay, Marie, you're up first. So here's your 45 seconds. Let's go. And you're on mute. You were off, now you're back on. Marie, we need to get you off. It happens to the best of us.
Sorry, it was a small group, but a very helpful group to belong to. They weren't organizations per se. They were staff people.
Yeah.
And I'm going first because I want to share this with everyone because they seem to think it was of great importance. When COVID hit, some members of our community went to the chief administrative officer at the municipality, said to him, look, we need to act fast. Things are happening in the community and the vulnerable populations specifically are being impacted. One was the loss of the Meals on Wheels program, which had been run out of the nursing home. So the CAO quickly got together and invited the nonprofit organizations, service organizations, fire department reps, search and rescue reps, all of the sort of emergency organizations, RCMP, and some NSHA staff like community services, etc. And we had our first Zoom meeting ever, learning curve. And from that, the group has made the Shettycount Community Response Network team.
Good.
We have stayed together, we met every week. And through that process, we realized how strong partnerships can be and how much more work we can accomplish together rather than working in silos, doing our own thing.
Great, great. Thank you for that. Thanks, Marie.
You're welcome.
Randomly, I'm just going to move to the nearest thumbnail on my screen, and it happens to be the town of Mulgrave. So if you folks want to take your 45 seconds and give us an update on one key action or idea that you talked about.
I think we thought to be a great idea to create an educational session around COVID-19, helping with fears and the public health regulations and getting them comfortable, getting everyone back to socializing again.
Okay, great. And because we don't have the benefit of seeing your name, because we've got Town of Mulgrave, do you mind just sharing your name with the group?
Sure. My name is Brent Lundergan. I just recently got hired with the Mulgraven Area Medical Center as Safety Food Coordinator.
Awesome, great. Great idea, thank you for that. Town of Mulgrave, and you've got about 3 people in the room there, it looks like. Awesome. Let's bump over to Antigonish Library, where we now have about 10 people still with us. Who wants to share on behalf of the library folks? Oh, it's Sarah again.
Hi again, it's me. One of the things we wanted to commit to was creating space for sharing and hearing and accepting constructive criticism about our respective programs and services in the community, so that we can, learn better from each other what works and what doesn't. And we think, going back to Marie's point, that does happen through partnerships. So adjacent to that is gathering together more frequently on a regular basis to develop those relationships so that we trust each other and feel comfortable talking about those difficult issues and accepting it as well.
And Sarah, was the conversation focused around the people in your room continuing to gather together and work together, or were you thinking outside of the walls of your space?
I think there's very much a feeling that the people in this room would like to continue that. And I think we would all be able to identify easily some people that could fit into that quite well. There's a lot of synergy in this room, if I can use that word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Sarah, I know who you are, but for those who don't know who you are, do you want to just maybe tell us your name and what your role is?
My name is Sarah. I work with the Pictou Antigonish Regional Library in a partnerships role, and I'm part of the planning team on this. So
awesome.
You'll see me again.
We'll be hearing from Sarah near the end. Thanks, Sarah. So randomly, next up would be the Sydney group. So again, I'd invite whoever's sharing, maybe just tell us your name and your role just to create some context.
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
You sound good from here.
Okay. My name is Aaron Ashton, and in the room is G. McQueen, Debbie McGinnis, and Brenda Moore. And we have mental health and addiction and community health board representation right now. One of the things that we did talk about was an event that we were planning pre-COVID, and it was involving public health, community health boards, and mental health and addictions. And it was around networking and understanding just some of the overlap priorities that each one of those departments is working on, and understanding, again, how we can create, and if I'm going to steal a word from Sarah that she just used, is some synergies, and just to mobilize around that. And Marie mentioned too about silos. So I think that's a word that we use a lot in the industry, and it's something that I think we don't appreciate sometimes until we start talking about it more and start to participate in events like this. So that's something that we're taking away from this, and we'll be really excited to see some of the other actions or some kind of declaration that happens from this event for different themes that might emerge that we might be able to glom onto.
Great, exciting. Thank you for the Sydney group for weighing in. Appreciate that. We'll move over to Arishat, of which we have 5 people. And I'll again invite the speaker to just maybe tell us your name and how you're connected to the group.
Hi, I'm Debbie Sampson, and we're sitting in the municipal office in Arishat for our county, Richmond. And actually the location is probably very conducive to this conversation, because I think one of the things we talked about often today was the fact of the disconnect between volunteers and the programs that are going on. And so that's what our action is centered around, is trying to build on that communication and information situation. The head of recreation was here also, and he feels that he needs to get out into community and hear what we need as programs, as volunteers. And so that's a plus. But to get back to our idea, what we thought we would do is that we would partner a couple of volunteers and maybe Michelle, who is the safety coordinator. We're volunteering her from all the way over here. And anyway, we do a presentation to what we call the Seniors Council for Richmond County. And they encompass all the seniors clubs from all over the county. And we would fill them with the information that we learned here today. So try to get more of the information out there and talk about social isolation and the solutions to those isolation issues that we found out today. And we've gotten the county to commit to giving us half a page or a page on the Richmond Reflections magazine, which goes out 4 times a year, to just talk about some of those things that do go on in the county.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Sounds like a really fruitful conversation with some really good tangibles coming out of it. So congratulations for that. Good luck.
Thank you.
Well done, folks. So I think at this point, why don't we invite everyone else to turn the videos on? And if you turned off all of those other folks who are non-video participants, you can turn them back on now if you'd like. Okay, and we'll all come back in the room. Brilliant. At 3:30 in the afternoon. So my invitation to you is to watch for a summary of the Padlet tools. Every tool that you worked within today, you know, I'll be providing a copy of that back to the planning team. And I understand there will be a circle back opportunity to you. So anything that you typed in those Padlets, if you didn't track them, you'll get a copy. It'll also give you a chance to look at what other people wrote down by way of ideas and actions as well, and that might spur you on to think about other things that you didn't think about today. So it'll be a good tool for you to have for sure. So lots of great things potentially going to happen. I know one of the things I noticed in some of the conversations and even in the Padlet tool is around the notion of resources and funding. And so we want to spend just a couple minutes now as we wind into our last half hour, just sharing specifically one funding option that many of you might be familiar with, and then we'll start to kind of wrap up. So with that said, I'm looking for Dorothy. Dorothy, if you are with me, can you just unmute if you don't mind? Because I might lean to you to help me introduce the CHB Wellness Fund if you're interested. Is Dorothy still with us?
I am. I'm here, Gerard.
There you are. Hi there. So Dorothy, what I think I might do, and this is totally unrehearsed, we're going to play the video, okay?
Okay.
Maybe after the video, for those people who have questions about the Wellness Fund, we'll give Dorothy a chance, maybe 3 or 4 minutes to answer any questions, only because I think we have time to do that. There is a bit of a descriptor in your handbook around the Wellness Fund, and I know the deadline's coming up really, really soon. So this is timely if you've got some kind of project you want to source some funding for. So I'm going to go on mute, and I'll invite Dorothy to stay on mute as well. I'm going to show you this quick video, and then anything else you need to know about it, I'll link to Dorothy. And I'll get Dorothy to introduce herself as well in a few minutes. You're probably wondering, who's this Dorothy person? Okay. Just get this up here. So this video I'm going to show is only about a minute, okay, but it sort of sets up the wellness funds. Oops, not quite ready to share it yet. There we go. So hopefully the volume is good on this and you can see this okay. Here it comes.
Wellness funds are now available. Each year, the Nova Scotia Health Authority works with your local community health boards, better known as CHBs, to make small grants available for new initiatives that help communities be healthier. You must be a nonprofit organization in order to qualify for funding. Eligible organizations include groups associated with municipalities, Conseil Scolaire Acadien Provincial, and the Nova Scotia Regional Centres for Education. To find out if you qualify and to get the application form, visit our website at www.communityhealthboards.ns.ca/wellness-funds. Be sure to connect with your CHB coordinator before submitting your application to ensure it's ready to go. Together, we will make our communities healthier.
So awesome. Takes me back to my days when I worked with CHBs. Dorothy, do you want to, why don't you first of all maybe just introduce yourself, if you don't mind, to folks?
Okay, can you hear me, Gerard?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Thanks, Dorothy.
Okay. My name is Dorothy Bennett, and I am the Community Health Board Coordinator for the Town and County of Antigonish, Guysborough County, and Strait Richmond Community Health Boards. I am one coordinator in the Eastern Zone, which runs from Antigonish to the other end of in Sydney. And we have 3 coordinators that work in our Eastern Zone. And along with, on our team of 5, we have Erin Ashton, who is our manager, who just spoke recently about the project in Sydney. And Brenda Moore, who's in Sydney, in the Sydney area. And we have Connie Ross McDonald, who works in Bedeque and Victoria counties, and we have Debbie Ross that supports us.
Great.
So we're a team of 5 that support the 9 community health boards in the Eastern Zone. Part of what your community health board does is offer a program called the Wellness Fund program. That program is there to help communities do startup projects, to help communities with small grants. This year we can give up to $10,000 ceiling. Usually it's a $3,000 ceiling, but those grants are given for communities to test out projects or to test out programs or services within their communities that are going to increase the community health, the overall community health. The projects have to be linked in some way to the priorities in the community health plans that have been created for each of the areas. There's collaborative plans, so there's 3 collaborative plans in the Eastern Zone. Here we have 1 community health plan for our 3 boards, our 3 straight area boards, and they have to, your projects have to have something to do with the priorities that are outlined in that. They also have to have some impact on the determinants of health. This year, because of COVID, we're also looking at projects that have an impact on something that's happened because of COVID, because of the pandemic. So there's a website called Engage for Health, the number 4, Engage for Health. And on that website is a conversation that happened with community members called Bounce Forward. It's Bounce Forward Initiative. And there's some themes that are coming out of communities that like high-speed internet, like access to long-term care visitation, there's all kinds of themes that are coming out of there that are listed on that website that communities can also use as a guide when they're making their application.
Right.
One of the key things, Gerard, is that as coordinators, our job is we're here to support the community groups and organizations into making the application. Your community health board decides on who gets funded and who doesn't, and how they're connected to their health plans and their priorities. But we're here, the 3 of us, Connie, Brenda, myself, along with Erin and Debbie, to provide support to the community to make the best application possible.
Awesome. So Dorothy, if I'm interested in moving forward, who do I contact? Are all the names for the coordinators on the website?
You can find all of the information just by simply typing into Google Nova Scotia Community Health Boards.
Awesome. And I think there's details in the handbook too.
Yeah, and on that website, you can find your coordinator, you can find all the information about wellness, you can find your application, you can find the priority health plans, you can find all the information that you need.
Awesome.
You can also talk to your community health board members. There are a great bunch of volunteers. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do the job that I do and get to work with all these community volunteers that are so willing to give whatever they can to help support the health of their communities.
Right.
Don't be afraid to go up and talk to them or ask them. And by the way, anybody on the call today that wants to join a community health board, contact us and we'll help you do that as well.
Always time for a pitch. Thank you, Dorothy, for that. And Celeste, I noticed, Celeste just put in the link to the community health boards, the wellness funds, as well as the generic link. So feel free to grab those links as well. We can certainly get those to people after today as well. Super, thanks for that. So it's important to know, what types of funding are available. That's one source. Jacqueline Campbell, who's with the Department of Seniors, she's been here with us all day, and she just sent a note to say that she'd be willing to just take 2 minutes to share a little bit about the funding offered through the Department of Seniors. So Jacqueline, if you want to go off mute and maybe spend a couple of minutes sharing as well, that'd be fantastic.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Department of Seniors, we have a couple of funding sources. One is our Age-Friendly Communities grant, of which that funded this project here today, or was one of the funders for this project here today. That grant, it has two different funding streams. One stream is for planning, age-friendly community planning, and the other funding stream is for projects. In an ideal world, it would be great if there were, the community were to come together, bring the various different, when we look at population health, if we were to bring all of the different people who work across different sectors related to the physical environment or the social environment at a community level, if you were to come together, have conversations about what's in place, where are some of the issues, go out into community, the things that we talked about today intergenerationally, to look at what's working and what isn't working, to engage with older adults, service providers, caregivers, learn from them through those conversations exactly how their community is working or not working for them, but also to go beyond that, because as we heard today, it is about across the lifespan and across generations. And then based on what you hear and from that planning and community consultations, the types of action ideas that come forward are the types of projects that this age-friendly community planning can generate, and that this funding can support. So, if you want to access the funding to actually do planning, communities, municipalities, community organizations, not-for-profits are eligible to apply up to $25,000. And you can engage with me to find out more on the details.
Great.
Perhaps you've already had these conversations at a community level, have your partnerships and your networks that we've heard you guys talking about here today, or even as coming out of today and the ideas that were generated in the breakout rooms. Reach out to me. These are the types of initiatives that I've heard about today that we would fund through our community projects stream. Right. And the last thing I would just say is the senior safety programs. You've heard from Michelle McPhee and you've heard from some of the other senior safety programs in the breakout rooms. That is the other funding source through the Department of Seniors. And up in Cape Breton, we would love to get a senior safety program up and running up there. And there's so open to conversations about that.
Right. Jacqueline, thank you for that. I love the off-the-cuff sharing that's starting to happen at the end of our day. Thanks for being here today too. That's fantastic, Jacqueline. I'm sure people will be reaching out. Celeste has already put in the chat some links to some of the funding sources that you've talked about as well. Awesome. So as we start to wind down our day, and I can't believe we're at 20 to 4 already. It's been such a fast-paced day and it's moved fast. Got a couple more things to take care of. I do want to invite one more person to join us before we wrap up. And some of you might know the name, Dr. Katie Albrecht. She's been here as well all day, and you might have met her in some of the breakout groups. I'll ask Joanna to maybe just throw in the chat room Katie's background as well. But I can read Katie. If you don't know, she's local to St. FX. She's Canada Research Chair of Health Equity and Social Justice. Director of Spatializing Care Intersectional Disability Studies Lab, and Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology at St. FX. Now, Katie's been invited to, come today, be present for the day, and at the end of the day, share some general reflections on what she heard and some of her experiences during the day. So over the course of the next 5 minutes, we're gonna just pass the mic over to Katie and allow her that opportunity to share some general reflections. So Katie, if you want to say hi to folks, we'll just test your volume.
Sure, hi, thanks,
there you
Jared.
go. No
And
worries.
I have a few slides as well. So would it be okay if I did a screen share or?
Sure, you should be okay to share.
Okay, thank you. And everyone can see my messy desktop. It's always your dirty laundry, right? When you do the screen share. Okay, let's see if I just get up for a second. There it is. Great. Okay, so thanks to you, Gerard, and to the Planning Committee for all of your work coordinating the connections and the conversations today, and to the excellent insights shared by presenters and participants. I'm especially grateful to Celeste for inviting me to join these conversations, which are important to me on a personal level as a member of the community. So I grew up in Antigonish. This is my home, and on a professional level as a researcher that's committed to community-driven and community-relevant health and social care research. So I was invited to reflect on some of the themes that have come up over the course of the day. And I just want to thank Laura Dowling, who is a research project manager at the Spatializing Care Lab at St. FX. So Laura's also been with us for the day, and she's created some really lovely wordles based on some of the responses to the discussions. And there's two that I'll focus on in particular, and then I'll just give a general reflection and wrap up by identifying some resources and possibilities for connecting with the university. So one of the questions was, who or what groups are most impacted by social isolation in your community? And as you can see, there were many different groups that were identified, and we really do have a lifespan perspective represented there. But it does seem like there was an emphasis on a few groups in particular. So people living with disabilities, seniors, and caregivers. And caregiver understood broadly, again, to have that lifespan perspective. What was at the core of the conversations here were people, and perhaps when we're thinking about this question, we really want to be reflecting on how we imagine people and who are included in our imaginations of people within community, and how might the ways that we have of thinking about what makes a person actually reinforce social isolation and loneliness at the collective level and even at the individual level in terms of how we think about and understand ourselves. And, so the next question was, what are the barriers to overcoming social isolation? And again, lots of different ideas were shared, but transportation seemed to be key. Fear came up, income came up, and access in ways that there was a salience that was there. And there was also a sense that in order to overcome social isolation or to address it, we really need to think about lack. And when we're talking about lack, we're often, really what's at the heart is resources and questions of access. So at the beginning of the day, Mary Pat highlighted the importance of reimagining responses to social isolation and loneliness, and the value in sparking connections that fit people's distinct circumstances and realities. Over the course of the day, we considered the role of virtual platforms and technology in helping us to make connections during a time when physical and social distancing isn't just a reality, but it's something that's mandated in the name of public health and safety. At the same time, there was recognition that virtual technology is not a solution or some kind of magic pill. Virtual connections can help, but they're just one tool within a toolbox that includes so many other tools discussed today. So engaging with nature, going for walks, meeting up with family and friends, simple kindnesses, and device-free dates. So like these other tools, the experience and the impact of virtual connections is also shaped by social structures, ageism, ableism, racism, sexism, heterosexism, classism, and elitism, xenophobia, and other prejudices and fears related to difference. So virtual connections provide one way of keeping in touch at those moments when we can't be in touch, when we can't physically and emotionally be connected. The magic or the spark, though, is not something that can or should be attributed to any one specific tool. The internet can't save us, and especially not if we can't access it. What matters, what fans the flame of the spark, is the opportunities for co-learning that are facilitated by these tools. So people and communities coming together in meaningful and impactful ways and being supported in sustaining those connections and fostering long-lasting and nourishing relationships. So universities and colleges can be another resource that you can all draw on, a space to showcase the exciting things happening in and among communities and to communicate also what is and is not happening. So there are different ways that communities, and I might go so far as to say colleges as well, can support you in the work that you're doing to address social isolation and loneliness. There are funding opportunities that we could either, bring to your attention or help to support you in applying for. There's an excellent opportunity that's especially relevant to all of you, and it's the Change Action Lab Research Initiative, or CLARI. So this is an opportunity that's offered every year by the 13 different universities and colleges in the province, where it has to be community-led research with program implications. Universities and colleges can also support training and education through free online now, largely workshops and webinars. There are many centers and labs that can support you in the work that you're doing. There are cultural resources, so libraries, concerts, and public lectures. And there's also the opportunity for student support, whether it's through, a program like at St. FX, we have service learning where it's very formal, or class-based projects, or even individual honor theses by students. Universities are also home to community programming. So at St. FX, we have X Project, which offers education and mentoring and transportation to the local First Nations and Indigenous African Nova Scotian communities. XChem is another excellent program that's offered at the university, where we have scientists at St. FX offering program at a free or reduced cost to try and increase an interest in science in young people and bring people together. There's also the opportunity for you to have greater outreach for your organizations through guest lectures and classes, and by using professors and centers' professional networks to share information about events that might be coming up that you're leading.
Great.
So just very quickly though, Gerard, one last thing I'd like to say is, the Spatializing Care Lab at St. FX can actually directly support some work. So I've included my email here as well as Laura's. We'd love it if you connected with us. We're often doing bridging events that have a cross-sectoral and intergenerational focus. We're currently hosting a COVID-19 web series and looking for stories and storytellers. So if you have a story you'd like to share, please be in touch. There's an accessibility network, a dementia care service mapping project where we want to create one place where information about dementia care supports and services are available, long-term care research, disability arts, and also the Department of Sociology at St. FX has the annual Dr. Agnes Caliste African Heritage Lecture, which is designed specifically to bring community into the university to learn from Black leaders from across the province and externally. So that's it, but thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So as Katie is on sharing her slides, what we commit to, I'm assuming we can do this, I'm leaning to the planning team. We have Katie's slides, and if there's anything in that that you didn't capture or get down, we can make sure you get a copy of those slides afterward. Katie, I'm assuming you're okay if we share those with folks if they're interested?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I love the summation of some of those questions and having had someone take the time to kind of immerse yourself into some of those answers and share them back, you know, with a few themes. So thank you for that. It's a great way to help summarize and close out our conversation. Folks, I want to honor your time at 3:52. We do have just a couple of quick things to do before we send you on your way. At this point, I would like to call on Sarah O'Toole, who you've met briefly in the Antigonish Library. And Sarah wants to spend a couple minutes just sharing some thank yous. And then maybe after Sarah, when you do that, I'll finish with my closing. And I've got one quick final activity I want to engage people in before we send you off. So please welcome Sarah. Sarah's on the planning team, as you heard, and she just wants to take a couple of minutes to share some thanks.
Thank you, Gerard. I'm off mute, good. There's a few thank yous, so I appreciate your patience. First of all, thank you to everyone who joined us today for Spark a Connection, for your attention and focus and your ideas. We're really excited and heartened by the interest in this event, but also in the topic of social isolation and getting at that in our communities. Thank you to Drs. Mary Pat and Christina for their presentation this morning, and for Celeste for bringing them to our attention and helping coordinate that. The panelists, Michelle Power and Jean McGee. Jean, I know you couldn't be here, but we felt like you were with us. Catherine Hartling and Catherine Jarrow, Michelle McPhee and Mark Feltmate for sharing your stories. Thank you to Katie Albrecht, Dr. Katie Albrecht, for listening and synthesizing on the fly today, and for Laura Dowling in the background there too. Thank you to the community members who submitted their project stories for the booklet and for the work that they've done to make the community a better place, and to the Community Health Board members for their dedication and time. I'd also like to thank Gerard and Joanna for helping us pull this event together and keeping us on task today and helping us through all those little bumpy spots. To NSH for their support, and to the Department of Seniors for the support of this event. And then I'd like to extend my thank you to the fellow members of the organizing committee for keeping this event moving forward through a summer in the midst of a pandemic, for bringing their perspectives and talents and deep concern for this issue. Should I list them, or shall we do that in a different way? What's the...
Sure, go ahead, let's do it. Okay. And maybe they can wave wildly at people as you're saying their names.
Yeah. Deborah Lee was our event assistant. It was so wonderful to work with Deborah. Dorothy Bennett from the Community Health Board Coordinator team. Crystal Fleurin Hunter, Antigonish Community Health Board and Pictou Antigonish Regional Library. Michelle McPhee at the Strait Richmond Community Health Board. Mary Desmond with Guysborough County Community Health Board. Celeste Cattell with NSH Mental Health and Addictions. Andrea Donovan with NSH Mental Health and Addictions and Health Promotion, and Callan Long with NSH Public Health. So big committee, we got it done, and yeah, really appreciate everybody's time today.
And if not for Sarah, I think we owe her a huge thank you, because if not for her, I don't think this would have come together in quite such a smooth fashion. So thank you, Sarah.
Okay. You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah, for that. Thank you for all the thank yous. It's always great when a committee member chooses to do that. It takes the pressure off me as the facilitator. Love that. Well said. Now, before I move on, the organizing committee members that were just mentioned, I'm going to invite you to go to the reactions button and just give us a wave so people can actually look around and find you and give you a thumbs up. Let's celebrate our organizing committee if you're here. Oh, here we go. There's a few people. Several of them are hosting these pods that you've heard us talk about all day. So again, kudos to the planning committee. It's been a ride, a fun ride, a joyous ride. Thank you. So folks, I want to just wrap our day up. It's been such a gift for me to work with the organizing committee to host this conversation. My background initially, and I keep saying that, but I guess it's still my background, isn't it? You know, I come out of the community development world and the health promotion world, and any opportunity I have to really connect into community and help communities engage in conversations is really what fills my cup. So I want to say thank you to my colleague Celeste for reaching out and inviting me to be part of this crew that's brought today together. It's been such a gift and a joy. My hope for you as a group is that as we near the end of our day, I hope that you're leaving with a sort of renewed sense of energy and excitement and curiosity around some of the notions we talked about today. Hopefully some of the work around thinking about actions has spurred you to think about what you can do as an individual as well as a collective. And I hope that you've been able to bridge some new partnerships and relationships to help move some of that forward. So I'm hoping to hear some great news and stories coming out of Eastern Nova Scotia around this topic. In terms of next steps, my commitment to the team, to the organizing team, is with Joanna's help, we'll push forward to the planning committee summaries of all the pivot walls, everything you've shared, even in the chat room, all of that will be documented and shared. And I know there's a plan for the organizing committee to meet, very soon to do some debrief and talk about any specific next steps. Thinking of next steps, is there anything that the planning committee wants to say to the group around next steps so that folks know what's going to happen after today? Or are we satisfied to say we'll be in touch? I know there's some evaluation work that needs to happen, so you'll hear about maybe giving some feedback through an evaluation process. Marie, I see your hand up. Did you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and it's going back to this morning with our presenters and the shock when I realized most of the messages being put out by media are probably making those who are socially isolated actually feel worse.
Yes.
If you noticed on some of the pages that they put up, the kind of headlines and things that they were using were not positive messages.
Yes.
I feel that we would be better served if we're addressing people who are socially isolated. It's to give them helpful messages and things that they can do to help themselves. Like saying, okay, we understand that these things are happening and we acknowledge that.
Right.
Now, here are some strategies that you can use to help yourself. And please know that there are groups and organizations and people out there who are willing to help you.
Well said. Thank you, Marie, for that.
Contact information for.
Nice reflection at the end of the day, Marie. Thank you for that. Something for us to continue to think about, I think, in the days and work ahead. So folks, the last thing I'm going to invite folks to do before you leave the room, I'd like you to think about 3 key words or phrases that for you describe how you're feeling or what you're thinking as we wrap up our day. And I'd like you to type those in the chat room. If you're with a group in a pod, I'd like you to think about those words and just turn to the person sitting next to you and tell them those 3 words. 3 words or phrases that reflect what you're thinking or how you're feeling. Share in the chat or share with a neighbor. And then I would suggest once you've got that done, you can feel free to, as you would in person, pack your bags, leave the room. I'll stay at the front of the room until everybody leaves. Let's see what you're typing. Guard against misinformation for sure. Together we can. Love that. Great 3 words. Grateful, Karen says. Inspired. Yep. Who needs 3 words when you've got 1 word? Inspired, right? Sharing. Thank you. Community partnerships. Nice. Inspired again. Awareness, appreciative, reflective, energy, action. Fantastic words. Thanks, Celeste. In this together. Nice. Motivated. Love that. I can feel your energy through my screen. This is fantastic. Motivated, forward motion, very nice. Awesome. So folks, as I said, you will be hearing from the organizing committee to provide some feedback. So, we would suggest in a moment, if there's anything you're thinking about by way of feedback, this was a new format, please make a note of that. So when it comes time to give more formal feedback, you can reflect back. So, if that helps in terms of your preparing for that process, make a couple of notes. Awesome. A spark to remember, inspired, keep working together. Love that. I'll keep reading them quietly. I'll invite you to read them as well. Thank you so much, folks, for your engagement today, your willingness to participate. Have a great evening, and I look forward to hopefully connecting with many of you sometime soon. Thanks for all of your questions and all of your enthusiasm. Cheers.
Thank you, Gerard. Had a wonderful day here at Kids First.